All right. So at the conference, the group got to talking a little bit about journey mapping, and different people had done it in different pockets. And your comment really stuck with me, where you said that you guys had an exercise that you used some journey mapping in, but I think the intriguing thing was you got together with marketing, and the comment you made was that you found a way to influence their KPIs. And so it just got the relationship going even better between the two of you. What was the background of that project, and how did you guys decide to work together in that way?
It's a good question. So, I think it started in that it really started with product first. It's how do we, product is building new features and tools for our customers. But they were doing some work on personas. Marketing was doing some work on personas as well, creating who is our customers, and they did focus groups and et cetera, et cetera. And I challenged the team to come out, our product team specifically, to come out to Tempe and shadow the reps on the ground. And it took a lot of prying to get them to come and shadow a lot. I bribed them with dinner afterward and things like that. Long story short, they loved it, and it was a great experience for them, and continue to do it regularly. They send their PMs out, and marketing, same thing, because I think what you miss in a marketing or product role is that actual customer interaction.
Right.
And we do it all the time, all day, every day. We have hundreds of interactions. So that was the first step, is to get them out here to understand. And again, it didn't have to be for 3 days. It could be for 2 hours. It doesn't have to be long at all. But it's, understand and listen in on customer interactions to really, really help you do your jobs better. So that was step one. And then after that, we started thinking about when we started uncovering pain points for customers. We identified a ton of broken processes in that. The conversation was really great at CCNG, the difference between depth and breadth. And so we've gone the route of breadth. So we created a bunch of different teams, specialized teams that focus on specific things, like a retention team and a reactivation team and a support team. And we uncovered some of the pain points during the shadowing sessions are customers' frustrations of having to get past kind of over the fence, and either getting lost in the shuffle, and I guess what we realized at that point is when we sat down and mapped it out, and this is with sales and those teams. I mean, it was like you can get touched by 12 different teams in your first 2 weeks. Like it was a crazy number, in between the new account sales team that's closing the deal, and then the support team, and then we have a trust and safety team to verify they're legitimate. And there's just all kinds of different things that have to happen. And it was disparate. So, I owned a bunch of those teams, but sales also owned some of those teams. And don't forget, the one piece we didn't forget is, don't forget all the marketing emails and touches that marketing does.
Right.
Those all count as customer interactions. So that took us from 12 to 18 different times we touch a customer. And when we also just noticed, just the inconsistency in, marketing is telling them this one thing and the agent's telling them this other thing because the marketing email is outdated, or the agent has the process wrong. It works both ways. And that was really frustrating for marketing, because they here they are thinking they're doing a good thing, and we're spending all our time telling them, like, oh, that email you received, ignore it, it's not relevant anymore or valid. And so anyways, I think that helped us get together, at least, right? At least to engage in the dialogue, is to know, like, hey, you're doing this one thing over here. Do you know that we're also doing these 6 things? And is there a better way to do this? And do we need to touch a customer 18 times? Could we save some time on my side or your side or someone? And so efficiency was the conversation. Let's make this easier for everybody. So then I think once we got to that place, it was an awesome place to be. And then we started talking about mapping customer journey, right? And we map customer journey generally, but how does it affect marketing KPIs? So efficiency is one, But from a marketing perspective, and I'm trying to think back on the KPIs for our marketing team, it's I mean, their KPIs are cost of acquisition, right? Like general marketing KPI. Yeah. And so we were saying, you know, for the $1,000 that you're paying to acquire this one lead, it's crazy expensive. You know, what's happening after that point is really was really broken. So again, they were getting touched a bunch of different times by a bunch of different teams, and you really can't see that unless you map customer journey. You just all you know is you feed the leads into the system, and you have a 70% conversion rate, and if that's good, that's good. But that other 30% was pretty big, especially if it's $1,000 a customer, or whatever that dollar amount is. So we said, you know, what if we try to increase that conversion rate by mapping the customer journey and strategically touching those customers at the right times. And sometimes it's actually not touching them as much, right? Like there's this whole sleeping giant philosophy that we've adopted that, you know, if you call everyone, we've tested it on day one of their subscription. So we offer a 4-day free trial, and then day one they get billed. If you call everyone on day one, your cancellation rate just shoots through the roof, because it's like, oh, I had that, I forgot. I didn't need that anymore. It's like if Netflix pinged you every week, like, are you still using me? If not, I can cancel you out. So that backfired, and that backfired when we were like, that was our first approach. Is like, well, we just white glove everyone. We have resources, it's white glove. Right. And then our cancellation rate shot up. We're like, okay, maybe we don't. So then we did some more analysis there. Anyways, long story short, I think the win for marketing and how marketing has continued has kept the engagement. So initially it was efficiency, but to continue the engagement, it's driving that conversion rate for them that decreases their cost per customer. And once they seen that in dollars and cents, they were all in on the project. So
what did it improve to? Did they tell you?
So that's a good question. I want to say, let's do some quick math. Sorry, it's the afternoon for me.
Yeah.
It was probably like 15 to 20%. It was pretty big. Oh,
that's huge.
It was pretty big. Yeah. It was really big for us. And so initially it's, I don't say easy to get the big wins, but you realize there's a lot of low hanging fruit when you map customer journey. Yes. And so so within the first 3 months, it was like 15, 20%. That's awesome. So then, interestingly enough, we applied more resources to the project, and like you dedicated full-time resources to the project, and then the wins kind of dwindled, and we were like, hey, what happened? And we thought the team was failing. I was like, no, you've got all the low-hanging fruit. Now it's just going to be incrementally, you know, we'll still progress, but you know, after that it was, you know, 5% or 3% or things like much smaller wins, but we still continued to get wins even after that. But definitely not as big as we did that first round, because it was really easy things. It was like, you know, once a customer signs up with us, you know, which introductory emails do we send? Which products do we highlight? Are we highlighting the right products? And so we got the feedback from the team. So, you know, my team interacts with customers. 70% of our calls are from customers within their first 30 days. So what questions are those customers asking? So they did focus groups with those reps and shadowed those reps and try to uncover some of that data, and then built that into the marketing drip email or drip campaign. And then reduce calls for me and increased, you know, dollars for them. So it was win-win all around.
Oh, I love it. Yeah. Both sides benefited. That's the best of all worlds. So how did you guys, how did you have these skills, like to do the journey mapping together? Was there somebody who was a subject matter expert that, you know, one person was really good at it and they facilitated it, or did you have these breakout sessions, or how'd you get through the process of journey mapping?
So I think the most important part, and it was, I don't know if it was a hard pill to swallow, but I really had to understand my touch points from my team, and I challenged every other leader to understand the touch points from their team. And to be frank, a lot of us didn't know. We didn't, or we thought we knew, and it turned out that wasn't the case. So we challenged all of the leaders to understand their portion of that customer journey. and really understand it, not just what it's supposed to be, but what it actually is. And so that meant that we had to go to the floor and ask those questions and look at the data. So we all gathered those separately. And then we came together with our operations team, which is they're the guys that build flowcharts, right? They're the ops guys.
Yeah.
So then they were critical to then like map it out and visualize it. And so we basically brought all of our touch points together, and then we said, okay, let's start with the first ad our customer hears. Like where can they hear an ad? How often do they hear an ad? Let's talk through those things. And that's the very first point, all the way until, and for us, a lot of our business is reactivation. So all the way until they, reactivate with us, because that's a good win, successful customer.
Oh, okay. So that would be like they did business with you and then they went away, and then reactivation is they came back to do more.
They came back to do more, yeah. And one thing we just a side note. So a lot of people use now CES or NPS, those kinds of metrics. We've used what we're kind of billing as a loyalty metric that works really well for us as a SaaS. So rather than asking NPS, and mostly because we have a lot of proponents against NPS, right? You either love it or you hate it, and unfortunately people here hate it. So for better or for worse, so we came up with a customer loyalty score. And it's a binary yes or no, and it's basically if will you use ZipRecruiter again for your future hiring needs, and that was so much more relevant to us and helped us know that customers are satisfied, because there's such a thing, especially in our space, of what we call happy churn, where they fill their position in 10 days, so they don't need us anymore, and they're happy. And so when we look at like churn numbers, that counts against us, but that's not really a negative customer experience, right?
Right.
But would and the same. I mean, it's very similar to NPS of would you refer? But it's a lot more tangible, because then we can allocate that as a potential reactivation and tie dollars to it and you can't really do that with NPS. So that was an interesting win and that's what we're working on now. By the way, we're trying to figure out. Now that we know when we touch our customers, when do we check in on them? To ask them the loyalty question, to ask them customer satisfaction survey on how their interaction was, if they had an interaction. So now we're trying to get a pulse on the different portions of a customer journey, so that we can optimize it kind of from there. But we don't have a really good way to do that next. So it's actually a whole nother map the journey, because product has surveys in the application. We have surveys post customer interaction. So we kind of have to go through the whole exercise again. All right, who's touching the customer for this specific reason, and map that out.
That's interesting. So you have kind of this base map of the customer's experience, and you had one focus that you started with, and I'm really intrigued by using that kind of base map and refocusing it for voice the customer purpose. Like you can refocus that map, it seems like, for a variety of different kinds of projects. Is that what you're finding happen?
Yep, exactly. Now that we have that baseline and we all went through the exercise, it's like, oh, let's go through it here. If we want to refine the sales process, we can go through that same similar process. If we want to refine the support process, when do we offer phone support to our customers? Is it throughout the entire journey, or is it through specific touch points? So you could use that base over and over and over again, for sure.
Did you find that you found any areas where you wanted data and you didn't have any? Like, oh my gosh, this portion of the journey is doing something and I'd really like to know, how often, how long. Could you find all the data that you were looking for, and who was responsible for that?
So yeah, one critical component for my team is because I have an analytical background. I have an analytics team, customer analytics team, and they and they're mission critical for these kinds of things. We're a software service, so it's somewhat easy for us to see a lot of our metrics. But I mean, there's so much data you can collect. Engagement metrics are probably difficult to understand, like when they engage with the product. Without some sort of tool that monitors that and reports that. Typically organizations don't just build that in, because we built the product so that it's functional, not so that we can analyze customer behavior.
Exactly. Yeah.
So that was a gap for sure. a lot of the, like, I think it works this way, but I don't actually know. That happened a lot.
Okay.
And so, and then it was like, okay, well, how do I prove that? And so one thing that's really effective is to create fake accounts, like create a fake account and actually see what happens. And that's the only way you actually know what happens every time.
Oh, right. And is that like in terms of using the product or
Mhm.
navigating through a particular process, something like that?
Yeah. So at a higher level, play the role of the customer, right? So actually play the role of a customer. So create an account, register for an account, and on our side, that creates a lead, that then creates a sales contact, that then creates a sales drip campaign. So you would only see and know that if you actually did that. Because there's so many different systems that we use. We use sales marketing email, then we use transactional email system, then we have our own CRM system. And so when I was asking people about what happens after I sign up, they were telling me only what they knew in their one system, and not everyone knew everything.
Yes.
So I was like, and I couldn't get a straight answer. And it was like, you told me one thing, but then you're telling me that it doesn't work that way anymore. It used to at one point. So no one knows. And I was really surprised. And I think we're all surprised at how much we don't know about our customer journey, which is why we should map it.
Right. But I mean, in a way, it's kind of excellent to find that out, because once now that you know how to fix it.
Oh my God, we found so many old emails that, like, wow, how are we sending this? Why are we still sending this? And they're like, oh, we never turned it off. And so if you just create a walk through your customer journey, you do learn a lot. And I would say a lot more than hunting. And also, it's a lot of work to hunt people down. It's a lot easier to just be the customer, just call in and see what happens.
Right, exactly. So when the folks came over to shadow your people in product management and marketing, did they just sit side by side and listen to calls physically and watch them work on their computers?
Yeah, so two methods are most effective: side by sides, and then the focus groups. So they pulled, and the focus groups, we really focused on our reps that are probably the most vocal, and organize them into smaller groups. Not everyone, but a good 10%, 20% sampling. And then and product kept it really open form. Marketing kept it really open form. And hey, what's your day-to-day like? What are customers saying? How's the product working for you? Things like that. And that was pretty effective.
Cool. And do you guys, as a former analyst, I'm sure if you have this, you're using the heck out of it, but do you have speech or text analytics that you're using to search out the answers to some of these questions and analyze them at scale? What kind of tools do you have like that?
So we have a hack of a tool. We have all of our data is in Salesforce. We import that into a database, a SQL database, and then we have a BI tool that we can query on top of that.
Oh, okay.
So it's pretty manual though. It's not as pretty as says this and doesn't say this. It's just like, let me search this product name or feature and I can see. And that was also really helpful for product. So what product has to do, and it's their job, it's their function, is prove things in charts and numbers. And doing a focus groups isn't charts and numbers, and so it's hard to attribute the value to that. But what they did do is when they heard about something, let's say one of our products is product A, and the agents are like, it's broken, no one likes it, blah blah blah. So then what we did is we then searched the database for product A anytime product A was mentioned, and then product focused on making enhancements and improvements to it, and you can literally see the drop off in the customer and the number of times people are mentioning product A. And for us, and
fascinating.
Yeah, I mean, and product loved it, right? Product was like over the moon, like this I could use. I could show this in my meeting. It's going to actually mean something to me.
Right.
And for us, it's like, oh, those are the cost per case, and times it by the reduction in cases. That's great for us. So I think that was key is getting the wins both ways and empowering both teams with the data that means something to them. Product, product could show an NPS survey, but is as impactful as the decrease in the times the product's mentioned. And for us, customers don't call us, unfortunately, to rave about our product. So anytime they say something about a product, it's probably because they don't like it.
Right. It's broken. Something went wrong. Of course.
Broken. Yeah.
What was the relationship you know, interdepartmentally with product and marketing before you did this? And then how do you think that it changed after you guys worked together?
So when we were a smaller company and all were in the same building, we worked really well together. And what happened is, and this happens commonplace, right? We moved our CS and sales operations to Tempe. Everyone else remained in Santa Monica, and just through distance and time, we grew apart. And so I would say when we started the project, we were definitely pretty disparate, isolated teams. And after the project, we're a lot closer. Probably, you know, frankly, still not as close as I'd like to be, because they move so fast, and you know, and obviously make changes that impact us, and not being there and involved in that process, but we do have a seat at the table, which is new, and that's awesome. So as products being developed, where they're asking for input and saying, you know, what do you think of this? And we'll go to one of our probably senior agents, and they give a pretty honest perspective of, you know, they'll hate it, they'll love it. That's great. It'll solve this problem, things like that.
So that's kind of a new thing, is having a regular seat at the table during the product development lifecycle. Awesome.
Yep. Yeah. Awesome. That's new for us.
So one last question. Because you said, you know, when you were a small company, you were all together, and it's such a fantastic environment to be kind of in that startup mode and banging through it together as a small team. But what do you think, like, just in the culture, even as you get bigger, what's the unique thing about the culture that lets you kind of reestablish these relationships and get that partnership going again?
It's a good question. I would say that for a while we probably lost sight of that, and then you know, what happened in our industry is, you know, no one knew who ZipRecruiter was, then everyone knows who ZipRecruiter is, and now we're in this place where Indeed and other competitors are aggressively trying to copy and inch us out of the marketplace. So those external factors definitely contribute to us kind of lit a little bit of a fire. That said, hey, we gotta stay innovative. Like we disrupted an industry, and we're now becoming the dinosaur in the industry that can get disrupted again, and we don't want to be there. So one thing that we do really well is the company has that startup mentality, so we continue to invest in R&D, and that's really awesome. So even in customer success, I have an R&D team. And basically what they do is they're just testing initiatives all day, every day. So mostly it's testing processes. They also test customer touch points. Like, what if we touch customers here or there? What if we were able to close a sale via live chat when, you know, we would always make people call in before. What if we can do it via chat? Does that mean more money? And so investing, and it's a relatively small investment in a small team of folks who are a combination of analytical people, but also some CS people, some sales people, and just really strong operational leadership. They're able to test all kinds of initiatives, and that keeps us, you know, young, so to speak. It keeps us innovative and keeps us nimble.
Is that all that they do? That innovation team is kind of skunk work stuff. Yep. So they're not pulled in multiple directions then with, say, like day-to-day operations and all of that? No,
they're just testers. I mean, they do get pulled in when we say, hey, there's probably a better way we could do this. And then they test it out, prove it out, and then we scale it. So they initiate test, and then I handle the scale.
Okay.
So we built entire teams from some of their efforts, right? We were like, hey, we should have a retention team that saves customers, and you know, we're a much earlier company in our tenure, so some of those things that other people, you know, have had, we didn't have, and we proved into, as opposed to just building it just because. Right.
Yeah. So you're actively sort of doing A/B testing as ideas come up. But it's interesting to me that that's all this team does, so that they can stay focused on it. Is it seen as is that like the cool kid? Is that where you want to be if you're cool?
For sure. If you can get in there, definitely. And mostly because their ROI is out of the world. I mean, they support a lot of the CS costs, which is also an awesome sell. To get budget for it is like, let these guys test it out, because they're testing things that can scale and have big business impact. And so if we can prove that out, one of the things they recently is, if we provide dedicated internal support to new sales reps who come out of training, we're able to get more dollars from them sooner. And then you scale that out to every new sales rep we get. So CS supports sales in that way. In any case, the ROI is massive. And once you get to, ROI neutral for this team, once the team covers itself, all those extra dollars we attribute to customer success, and now we become less of a cost center.
Right.
So that was interesting. And I always say, because it's hard to get budget for these kinds of teams for sure. I always say, start with one hire, find, really strong operational analytical guy. And I guarantee you he'll prove his ROI in short time. That'll then get you to add one more. And that's how I did it, one, and then right, there's enough ROI here for 2. Can we get 2? Yes. All right, let's get 2. There's enough ROI for 3. And now we have 10. And so it's if you start with one, it's a no-brainer, because there's I think about it myself. Like, if I could focus on operational efficiency full time, we all, like, if I just could focus on one thing and not have to do my day job of managing people, I'd be a lot more successful. But I get paid to manage the people, and now I have people that manage the operational piece of it.
Right. That's fascinating. That success you've had with that team. I've only seen it one other time, but also they had terrific results, and they found millions of dollars in cost savings.
Yeah, I want to say there's only 2 types of companies. I think it's the companies that invest in these resources and see the terrific results, and then the companies that don't. I don't know if I've ever seen it fail. You either don't try, or it's wildly successful. Yeah. So I mean, the odds are in your favor.
And so, really quickly, so the site, how big is that group currently? How many people are in it?
There's about 10. There's about 10 in that group, yeah. And that's relative to a customer success team of about 120. So it's a sizable chunk. 10%.
Yeah, that was exactly what I was going to ask you. But if they're bringing in the money, then there's.
Oh, they're paying for 60 of the reps at least.
Yeah, why not?
So as long as you can prove the ROI, and that's really the approach that I'm taking with this team, and that the business is taking with CS. We're not a cost center in all the traditional metrics, so we don't really track cost per case and driving that down and case deflection, some of those standard things. We keep a pulse on it, but when we present to the executive team, or when we provide updates, it's really about the R&D team testing all these initiatives that drive dollars. But it's also about the churn we're able to reduce by this new campaign that the support team is engaged in, or things like that. And so much more focused on, because when you're a SaaS company with SaaS margins, you don't have to worry about costs really. And so you really focus your efforts on revenue, and it's fundamentally changed how we manage and grow the team.
Yeah, great. And I would imagine that the mood is very different than a strict cost center also.
Oh yeah, for sure. Exactly. Yep. It has far-reaching implications. That's awesome.
Perfect. Well, it is at the end of our time together. And again, I want to thank you so much for being willing to do this and share it with the greater call center teams out there. And I may write a little blog post about it if that's okay with you.
Of course. Yeah. If you need anything, let me know. Happy to help. These chats are great.
Okay. Awesome, Joe. Thank you so much. Take care.
No problem. You too. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.